appointed official who has no time for us peons, Dr. Levin. The sheriff's here. And that is enough to offer him the honor that is due the position. Be respectful tonight. Ask your questions, but the anger of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. Okay? We're going to get answers tonight, but ask them with civility. Okay? Sheriff Ayub has been our sheriff. He's running for re-election against Jim Fryhoff, who I no longer endorse. And I'm blessed and proud to welcome to the stage my friend and our county sheriff, Sheriff Bill Ayub. Come on.
Well, it's great to be out here with you this evening. Matt, thank you for providing the venue. I have not been in here since it moved from a few blocks over. This is very different. But I did have breakfast outside the other day, and it was the food simply was good as always. Pastor McCoy, thank you for the introduction. And couldn't think of a better partner to have out of Thousand Oaks having the board on my half and talk about great touch and sensitivity with the community. This man was everything in the community at the time, and I know it had a big part in helping heal it. I'm the county sheriff. I've been in law enforcement for 36 years. I'm a local guy, born and raised in Ventura. 4 generations of family are here in our county, and this is my home, and I take great pride in keeping it safe. We've had some challenges lately, to be sure. Gave birth to this organization. And Pastor McCoy and I were talking before we came out here this evening, and he was mentioning, the office of the sheriff. It's a very powerful position. You have a lot of authority and so forth. And it got me thinking about some things that are happening around the country to weaken the power of the sheriffs. And we saw that, we're seeing that here in California. Last year's legislative cycle, actually the last several years, we're seeing efforts to take away authority and power from sheriffs. What's happened in some parts of the state, the country, and that very well may likely be happening in California, is we're seeing the highway patrol bolstered by funding and added responsibilities heaped on them by the governor's office. Of course, they answer to the governor's office and an appointed commissioner by the governor. And so you have a state police force that has been historically responsible for traffic in the state, traffic enforcement, investigation of accidents, and so forth, and now is doing homicide investigations, criminal investigations in different parts of the state. You saw the governor down in Los Angeles picking up cardboard boxes from the railroad cars that had been looted by thugs in Los Angeles thieves, and making a show of talking about, I'm going to put money into this, we're going to fight organized crime, and so forth, and it gives money to the highway patrol, which does traffic investigations. So you're seeing a strengthening of the highway patrol, very likely to move in and take some of the policing responsibilities away from the sheriff's office. Now, we have 58 counties in the state, 58 sheriffs, and the bulk of them all have police forces that provide county police services. In other parts of the country, you see county police departments formed with an appointed police chief. So it takes away the policing function from sheriffs and leaves sheriffs with the responsibility to monitor the jails, tend to the courts, serve civil process, and so forth. So that is another way the sheriffs are being weakened by stripping away authority, their connections with the community, staffing that disappears because they no longer have a patrol function. I would not be surprised if something like that takes place in this state. Just this last legislative cycle, we saw 3 efforts to strip away authority and power from the sheriff's office. One was an effort to move the election cycle for sheriffs to the presidential cycle. So it's currently in midterm, it's a gubernatorial cycle. Their argument is that fewer voters turn out, less scrutiny of who is to be chosen by the electorate to be sheriff. In the presidential cycle, more people are energized, more likely to have more voter turnout and so forth. So that was one thing. The other was the idea of stripping away the certifications that are placed upon people that are eligible to run for sheriff. And so currently there's a requirement that there has to be a certain amount of peace officer experience. The job we do is complex, sophisticated. I have a 1,300 member department, $300 million budget. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of mechanics that go into running the organization. The idea of stripping away those prerequisites would allow anybody, any elected official with name recognition could, and you can use your imagination, could come in and become your sheriff and deal with the power of 760 deputies in the community and 500 other employees. So that's kind of a concerning thing to think about. Another was an effort to look at changing the state's constitution. The Constitution mentions the sheriff is to be elected by each of the 58 counties. There's an effort afoot to at least to investigate changing the Constitution so that the sheriff would be appointed, or there would be a sheriff at all.
Appointed by whom?
Likely appointed by a governing body, probably a board of supervisors, so some sort of elected body.
Yeah.
So these are things that are happening, and I'm telling you that to give you a clear picture of what the environment looks like. And I have a lot of access to Sacramento and Washington and talk to sheriffs across the state and across the nation. And I've heard legislators talk about, there's an obstacle in their way, we're going to change the law, we're going to change the Constitution. And so that's the frame that we've been working with and that we have to overcome. And so that guides some of the things that we do and some of the things that we don't do. I know there's a lot of questions here, and I'm happy to take any of those and answer what I can. And I don't know how much time we have.
I'll give you all the time you want. Keep
Yeah.
talking.
Okay.
You just want to keep talking about your question.
I can talk for a long time. I don't think everybody's
Do it once. Whatever you want. You just tell me when you're ready. I'll come up and
Yeah, so a couple of things we're seeing in the community. Homelessness is on the rise. It's probably number one issue in all of the cities that we police. We police 5 of the 10 cities in the county, and five other cities have municipal police departments. But every one of those chiefs, every one of our cities would tell you that, and it's actually it's a good problem in the sense we don't have violence in the streets and a lot of terrible crimes to investigate. But homelessness is one of our top issues, and it's growing. Just like mental illness in the community, just like unfettered drug use in the community. All three are interrelated. Homeless very often have mental illness that is coupled with chronic drug use, chronic alcohol use. We have permissive policies in the state that have become even more relaxed. Last year, by the way, this was only pulled off the table because of the governor's re-election, or the governor's recall effort. There was a piece of legislation that had serious legs and would have made lawful to possess and use all of the hallucinogens, LSD, ketamine, psilocybin mushrooms, all of those psychedelic drugs that are out there that have horrific reactions that people get when they take these drugs. Drugs that are stored in the fat cells and come out at inopportune times in the future. Just a terrible idea. But this is out there. It's still alive. Probably will come back this year, and was on the precipice of passing last year. And like I said, they pulled it off because they didn't want to put it out there for the governor to have to either approve or veto. It would have been problematic for him in his recall effort, at least that was the perception. So we have this chronic problem of homelessness that's growing, disgorging of prisoners from the state prison system. We had 180,000 prisoners in state prison 10 years ago. Today we have about 90,000.
Wow.
So 90,000, serious felons that are out either in county jails or out in the community on early release. And the politicians are scratching their head wondering why crime's rising in those places. Happily, reported crime is staying low in Ventura County. Violent crime in particular is actually low in that state. It's a good thing for us, but we're unusual, very unusual. It's going up all around us. Los Angeles, violent crime spiking. Kern County, violent crime's out of control. They did a recruitment for deputy sheriffs a few months ago, and 0 applicants. one person wanted to be a deputy sheriff in Kern County. The sheriff there has enacted a hiring bonus. He's paying people to get a job, and yet nobody will come out to do that job. We struggle locally and are short-staffed. Short staffing in law enforcement is a nationwide problem. It's actually a global problem. And I really worry about the state of our law enforcement in the years to come with caps on pensionable income. I worry about leadership. I worry about longevity in the business. People are going to leave early if they aren't able to grow their retirement earnings. There's a lot of things afoot that give me pause. I think it's great that we have a room here full of civic-minded people that care about what our community looks like in the future and can move together and have a common voice. That's how things get accomplished. Is you speak up and you talk about things that are important to you. You make noise with your elected officials and you get them to move. That's how things happen. So,
Yeah.
Sheriff, this is, I actually alluded to it earlier, that we wouldn't have the First Amendment without the Second Amendment. And it's interesting that the court ruled on behalf of this, the Ninth Circuit Court, but let me just read the question to you. And again, Dr. Levin had a hand in all this. March 2020, gun shops were threatened with action if they were open for business by the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. That prompted a federal lawsuit. You were named in it, so was Sheriff Levin. Excuse me, so was Dr. Levin. Thanks. For the past 22 months, the county attorney has argued. No, I got it. The county attorney has argued on your behalf and the county that it was legal and proper for the county to close gun shops by declaring them to be non-essential. January 20th, 2022, a month and a half ago, the three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit unanimously ruled 3-0 that you, Sheriff Ayub, Dr. Levin, and the Ventura County in general violated the Second Amendment rights of Ventura County citizens by closing gun shops. Ventura County declined to appeal in time, so the decision's final. And then the question is, do you still believe gun shops are non-essential? And then, if depending on how you answer, what, if anything, would you do differently if you could do it all over? Sheriff?
Thanks for the question. It's certainly been a hot topic of conversation in the community. We wanted to address a couple points first. The case is still active. It's being reviewed in what's called en banc by the Ninth Circuit. And that means all of the magistrates that are part of the Ninth Circuit are looking at this case and will render a decision. So it had been reviewed by a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court, and they overturned the lower court's decision that the orders were lawful. And so that case is still underway. So I'm limited with what I can say, but I want to just clarify how the sheriff did not issue any closure orders. First of all, these are public health orders issued by either the governor or the public health officer in Ventura County. So the California Constitution provides for a public health officer and bestows powers upon that person. That person is the governor, unless there is a local health officer in a county. Each of the 58 counties is a subdivision of the state, and they can have their own health officer appointed by the governing body. And many counties do not have one. They refer to the governor as the health officer for that county. Ventura County has a health officer. It's Dr. Levin. We've heard that name mentioned a couple times this evening. What happened was the governor issued these health orders when this COVID thing first came upon us, and came up with these non-essential and essential businesses and so forth. And in Ventura County, our health officer said, well, I think the governor's order is fine, but I think it should be more restrictive. So the health officer in Ventura County imposed some stricter rules. One of the rules that the health officer imposed was that gun stores were non-essential. And I hate that word. I think it's a misuse of the word, but that's what was used at the time. The governor was approached by other counties because his order was very vague. And the other counties said, hey, Governor, are gun stores essential or non-essential according to your order? And the governor said, being somewhat smart, says, you know, that's a sticky issue. I'm going to defer to county sheriffs. So he deferred to the county sheriffs in the county where the governor is the health officer. That makes sense. So you have a number of those counties. Riverside is one of them. The sheriffs in most of the counties, well, I think in all of the counties, said no. I think gun stores are essential. Second Amendment activity. People need to, the store may not have a Second Amendment protection, but all the people that want to arm themselves or resupply their ammunition or buy materials to repair their weapons, clean them, and so forth, that's part of Second Amendment protection. And so in Ventura County, that did not happen. The health officer held strong and said, hey, I don't think they're essential, and that was the case. So there were a couple instances where deputies went into the community. My approach to all of this from the beginning and through to the end and to this day was that we were going to help educate the public on what the health orders were, and that enforcement was never something that we would focus on, and we never had to conduct any enforcement throughout this thing. One of my concerns with that was that, and there's some, and I've heard it from many people, there's some sheriffs that make some very bold statements, think this health order's bunk and we're not doing anything. And in many of those cases, state agents went into those counties and started doing enforcement. And that was something I did not want to have happen here. I did not want Highway Patrol, I did not want Department of Justice, I did not want any federal agencies that potentially could have been called in to come into Ventura County. I think we can take care of ourselves here. And so that's one of the reasons I am not a vocal, loud statement maker on those types of things. I did, however, hold strong on my enforcement position or lack thereof. So our deputies did go out to a couple of the gun stores and said, hey, we've got complaints from members of the community, and there were people lined up down the street because, of course, when there's crisis, people are going, this is a time of danger. I need to re-up my ammunition supply or get my materials from the gun store. There's nowhere else to get them.
Especially when they release 90,000 prisoners.
Well, they released It's a good point. I struggle with the whole thing. So there was a time where, and this went on for, I believe, 42 days, the health officer finally relented and deferred to me as to whether the gun stores could reopen. And of course, I believe strongly in the Second Amendment, and I said, yes, by all means. I think they can sanitize and socially distance and all these other things as good as anybody else. And so they reopened. But we did some things that I don't know. It's a difficult thing when you're trying to work through a health crisis. I don't know anything about germs and how they're transmitted. I mean, I had kids and so forth, and I wipe their nose and stuff. Yeah, nobody knows, but you kind of.
I don't think Dr. Lip does.
There's a point where you kind of go, I think that people are smart enough, they're able to navigate their way through life. Let's educate them and let them make their own decisions.
Hey, Matt, do you want me to ask this, or do you want to do it? Come on up, man. You know what? You take this and hold that. Wait, he's got his question. We'll get to you. Hang on. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. I just wanted to follow, because some of the things, so many of you know that.
Stand up,
Oh, I
Rhonda.
can use the microphone.
There you go.
So as many of you know, that was actually my case. And the sheriff, it's the main enemy here was Dr. Levin.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened on the legal side that sheriff may not have been aware of. Like the whole opening of the gun stores in the first place was actually because the day before our temporary restraining order hearing in federal court, the county council sent a notice to the judge saying, we're opening gun stores. That was to avoid the TRO. It was so bad, I don't know if you knew this as well, but they actually made it a misdemeanor crime to purchase a gun outside of the county. These were orders that were written by Dr. Levin. So, yeah, the sheriff's office was limited, and I had to name the sheriff in the lawsuit because of the sheriff's position, but in no way was it personally directed at the sheriff. As a matter of fact, I had a heated conversation with the Second Amendment Foundation about not wanting to add the sheriff to the lawsuit. So I just wanted to say that Sheriff Ayub was not the main culprit. It was Dr. Lemon was the driving force behind closing gun stores and using that as a way to grab more power.
May I comment, though? Right. Hi, John. A lot of you know me. I'm the owner of VC Defense. I will say, however, the sheriff did allow his officers to molest us in our businesses and threaten us. I was told that Tennyson, the police chief of Camarillo, went to Camarillo gun shop and threatened Carlton with arrest if he was open. That's hearsay, to be honest with you. Carlton told me that himself because Tennyson could not get any of his officers to go deliver that message. A couple officers came to my office. I mean, to be honest, if gun shops are essential, the sheriff, you really never should have allowed your officers to partake in any of that. Thank you.
Just a comment, I have probably about 130 deputies out in the field right now, and I have no idea what any of them are doing. I hope they're doing the right thing, but they very often do not. I would say very often. Occasionally they do not. And it was a troubling time, and it was dynamic. We had complaints coming in from all different directions. I know the Camarillo chief and at the time the Thousand Oaks chief went to the VC Defense, or had somebody go there, and I wish they had. But we went to many businesses, and the intent was to, and I worried about gun stores. I was a federal firearms license holder for a number of years. I know how tenuous those can be if you get on the wrong side of the law, not necessarily the sheriff's law, but any other type of enforcement organization. And I did worry about those businesses getting afoul of some kind of regulated agency. But my position, and if you watch Fox News, you would have seen me on, I think it was Fox Nation or one of these national broadcasts where I talked about it. I said, I will not declare that we will never enforce these things. There's a mechanism for enforcement because I would not want to take a tool away from my deputies that they may need to use for something. I don't know what that would be. We haven't seen it yet, and we didn't need to use it. Most people did what they needed to do to keep themselves healthy and to take care of business here. And we have a lot of responsible people in this community. Speaking of Second Amendment, I've heard a rumor that I'm going to close down the concealed carry program. I don't know where that rumor is coming from, or why it would be surfaced, or why I would go through 3.5 years as sheriff and then suddenly close down a program that I have a lot of buy-in to. In fact, I just added a automated system for applicants to streamline the process. So, there's some concealed carry licenses in here, and if there are, and you value that, there's not going to be any changes as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm in office.
Thank you. One of the questions I asked